Hey, my name is Forrest Messenger. This is going to be my first video, of which I believe there will be several more, on what it means to be spiritual, truly spiritual, and at peace with God. This video is a story of how my spiritual life began. My mom and dad broke up when I was 6 years old. My dad got a roommate to maintain his middle class lifestyle while my mom married a hippie musician. Dad took me to an Episcopalian church because the divorce excommunicated him from the Catholic church we had attended prior to the divorce until he moved to Northern California when I was 10. After that, I joined the church's choir and got involved with the youth group. I stayed at that church until they started talking about being born again in the youth group meetings, which to me at the time was too weird. So I went back to the Catholic church my family attended before the divorce. I joined their adult choir and, like the Episcopalian church, went alone to church because my mom and stepdad weren't Christians. My dad at the time was truly my hero. He had new cars every 3 years, had nice furniture, a new, bigger house than my family lived in. And then when he moved to the Bay Area from Orange County, I was born where I was born. It seemed cool because he seemed to have it all going perfectly. My mom and stepdad, on the other hand, were a struggling artist and musician. We hardly ever ate out. Even after my stepdad made it with the group The Carpenters in the 70s, my parents remained extremely conservative with their money, keeping their lifestyle very simple. A model for which I am really thankful now, being an accountant for a living. But it aggravated me as a kid growing up in the highly materialistic culture of Orange County. I didn't see my dad often, and beginning in 1970, when I was 10, my stepdad hit the road with the Carpenters for about 6 months a year for the next 10 years. So without having Dad around, or Bob Messenger, my stepdad, around full time, my relationship with my dad was pretty much idealized and based on externals. Dad used to take Suzanne and me camping every summer for a week or two. These were pretty much the only vacations I had as a kid. In 1974, the summer I turned 15 years old, I learned from my Catholic godmother's son that my dad divorced my mom to go into the gay lifestyle. It was then that I realized something darker and more frightening that I didn't know how to talk about, nor did I want to bring it up. I now knew the secret shame I had of being inappropriately touched by his roommate. There was a darker thing than I originally thought. My mom had introduced me around this time to metaphysical phenomena at an occultic center in Santa Ana. I went to a seance with her where a black medium channeled a spirit right there in the room. What I saw happening was truly bizarre. Her head became surrounded by a green aura, spun around, and then she began speaking in a man's voice who claimed to be a Civil War era spirit from the South. I had been in a skateboarding accident that day and had a deep, nasty gash in the palm of my left hand. When the spirit incarnated itself in this woman, my hand felt weird, and I looked down, and I was completely physically healed. There's a small scar there to this day, but my hand was healed without a scab or anything. Since my Catholic experiences didn't measure up to the metaphysical encounter with the medium, and my life idol was taken off the pedestal I had him on, I left church, I started using drugs, having sex with girls, and used alcohol to numb my pain. By the time I was 16, I was getting high on weed every weekend, every night, actually, after doing my homework. And I became very involved in New Age ideas. I began to pursue witchcraft to try to regain control of a life that had spun terribly out of control around me. The three things I wanted most in life under control that drove this interest were my mom and dad being together, my family being wealthy and finding acceptance by all of my Orange County peers, and just to be accepted by others. For quite a while, my drug experience seemed to fit hand in glove with the occult experiences I read about and practiced from Aleister Crowley and Carlos Castaneda. I now hated my dad because of what he was and what he had done to my family. But I was forced to visit him on Easter and summer breaks. By 16, I was using LSD once a week. It had become part of an honest spiritual inquiry, though. It wasn't just about being high. But I still had to be in control of it because those closest to me couldn't be trusted to do the right things, in my mind. So when God spoke to me one time when I was on acid and said, "Forrest, you don't need to take drugs to know me," I blew him off. I couldn't trust a Heavenly Father I couldn't see because I couldn't trust the Father I could see. 2 months after my Easter journey, on my 17th birthday to visit my dad, my sister and I went to a dinner theater. When I went to use the bathroom, 2 people I had never seen before or since confronted me and told me God had a plan for my life and that drugs would destroy me. I used the bathroom and thought to myself, that was really freaky. Then on my way back to my table, they were waiting for me again. And they told me I wasn't imagining things, that they were real and God was real and He cared about me, and they reiterated that I should quit using drugs. 9 months later, on the Easter break of my senior year in high school, I was at the end of my visit to the Bay Area to see my dad, and he dropped me off at a Greyhound depot to catch a bus to visit my grandma Lottie in San Jose on the way home. Waiting for the bus was a 26-year-old druggie who looked like a burned-out 40-year-old. It was a shock to me because in Orange County, things were so middle class and white. You just didn't see people who looked homeless and burned out running around like that. I heard a voice inside me tell me that if I didn't change where I was headed with drugs, I would end up just like that guy. Then one day in May in my senior year, about a month or 2 later, my druggie traveling buddy, Steven, and I decided to sit in a yoga posture, drop acid, close our eyes, and meditate to see what happened. I got a lot more than I was planning for that day. Shortly after closing my eyes, I felt myself being pulled down a long, dark tunnel. At the end of the tunnel was a great, pure, white, fiery light. As I journeyed toward the light, I could see images of memories from my life along the sides of the tunnel. There was a great, all-encompassing roar or sound, such as you would hear if you were heading towards a great waterfall or near a jet engine. This sound grew louder and louder as I approached it, and the light appeared larger and larger as I proceeded down the tunnel. Eventually, I reached the end of the tunnel, entered the light area, and it was completely shadowless. The noise stopped. Everything around me and inside me was completely still. I looked down. I could see my body laying on the floor in the room where I started this journey. The only way I can describe this place is what I would imagine being inside a cloud, but without fog and a lack of visibility. I felt surrounded and filled with love, peace, and a calmness I had never experienced before. But I also saw myself in a way I had never been able to see before. I saw myself with the eyes of truth that was objective to me. It was outside of me. It wasn't deceived or subject to a lack of objectivity. I could see how spiritually I was really dark and corrupted. This came as a real surprise to me because all of my experiences with drug had been an evolving journey to that point. I was under the impression that I was getting wiser and deeper than other people through my drug and occultic endeavors, but now I knew that wasn't the case. Suddenly, I was in the presence of about 24 men who glowed white hot and bright, just like the place I was in. Somehow I knew, though, that they weren't just disembodied spirits. They were historical figures. They had been on earth for their own lifetimes, but now they were eternal, permanent, substantial, authoritative in the sense that They were like kings with the power to judge. The men could read my thoughts and I could read theirs. And the men said something I'll never forget. They said, "Forrest, are you ready to be dealt with? Or do you want to go back to earth and complete what you've left unfinished?" I knew as soon as they asked that question that they were asking this with the knowledge of my recently discovered true condition spiritually. I didn't know what was unfinished about my life, but I knew clearly that in my current condition, I would not stand the scrutiny of the piercing truth in the place where I found myself. So I answered in the only way possible, no, I need to go back. If you take an acid, you know that when you do, you're in for an 8 to 10 hour departure from reality. It's like being awake in the middle of a dream. I was 2 hours into the acid trip I started, but after saying no, I need to go back, I found myself back in my body and stone cold sober. That never happens on acid, trust me. Dense and clueless as I was, I asked Stephen if he saw what I saw. He hadn't, and I didn't really understand that I had been given another chance at life, that I'd had a near-death experience. So a week or two later, I did my first pentagram ceremony in my room. If you know what that is, that's a occultic ceremony to try to channel a spirit. And a spirit showed up. But this wasn't a friendly, warm, fuzzy spirit. It wasn't some groovy, hip, new age spirit. Like my experience at the end of the tunnel, there was an all-knowingness with the spirit. But this spirit was malevolent and dark. The spirit wanted to control and inhabit me. All the warnings I had had to that point from God, from those people at the dinner theater, from the druggie encounter at the Greyhound station, and my near-death experience didn't get through to me the way that that spirit did. You see, since I had been reading guys like Aleister Crowley, Baba Ram Dass, Carlos Castaneda, I didn't believe in good and evil anymore. The spirit shook me out of that delusion and literally scared the hell out of me. I knew he was bad. Bad with the thickest, darkest badness. Badness with permanency. The spirit made me realize that if he was real and permanent, even though he was a spirit that was incarnate evil, God had to be real, and I needed to find him. So I just said a simple prayer. God, please help me get off drugs and find you. And within 2 weeks, I stopped smoking cigarettes, drinking, and drugging after doing the S training. The S training was a 2-weekend seminar. It was kind of a crash course in Zen Buddhism for lazy Southern Californians back in the 70s. The first hour of the training, the lecturer said, anyone who gives up choice in their life is an idiot. I recognized that I was feeling like the victim of drug use. And at the break, I threw away my cigarettes that I had bought on my way in and haven't gotten high since. I gained self-control from EST, but I didn't find God there. The EST people would do these guided affirmation sessions during the seminar where we would close our eyes and they would say positive affirmations over us. For me, it was just what I needed to know, that there was beauty and order in the universe, that the universe made sense because it was ordered, and that it was okay for me to be alive and function in it. As I thought about that in the week between the 2 weekends, I realized that if there's beauty and order in the universe, then there was only one possible reason for this. The beauty and order was put there because I was an AP student in every subject in school, especially math and science. And the second law of thermodynamics says that everything is in a process of losing energy unless energy is applied to it to keep it going. So beauty and order don't come from nothingness, evil, or chaos. At the end of the day, on the third day, the Saturday of the second weekend, EST said that they were going to explain the structure of the universe to us. So I was sure that when I came back the next day, they would tell us that Jesus Christ really was God, that it was okay to believe